Welcome to the W2W review. I am the Oakland Knight, and joining me as always is Raider Pirate. What's up, Pirate?
What's going on, Raider Nation?
All right, Raider Nation, today is Tuesday. That means it is Defensive Tuesday. This is the day where we go over our defense from last Saturday's game against our matchup against the Tennessee Titans. It wasn't pretty, but nevertheless, it is what it is. So, Pirate, why don't you go ahead and take a look at the numbers and see what we got.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of talk going in, articles being written. Jack Del Rio talked about it. A lot of people are kind of talking about the buzz. This run defense just is not very good. You know, the pass defense looks like it's getting a little bit better. Emerson and, Smith kind of after some early jitters, played fairly solid. But taking a look at sort of the entire defensive side of the ball, they allowed 132 yards. A lot of that, came early on. It was just really horrible to watch DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry just kind of do whatever they wanted to do. Watch the offensive line kind of push our defensive line around. Once again, we had turnovers that put them in position to score some points. And then you're looking at the two interceptions that we threw, to them. We didn't get any interceptions. So when you look at the turnovers, we lost one ball. We fumbled the one ball that was returned for the touchdown, and then the two interceptions.
Correct.
So basically that gave their offense 3 opportunities to score. I think they didn't even punt the ball until almost the end of the third quarter. Was the first time that Tennessee had to punt the ball. They just continued to score. Even though they were field goals, they continued to score. They moved up and down the field. Basically, again, they had 54 plays, 336 yards against this defense. They had about 6.2 yards per play. They were able to have 19 first downs. Once again, the pass defense played better as we got further into the game. Once again, this starting run defense was extremely, extremely shaky. And there's some things that I kind of want to get into, with that. So, by the numbers, again, like I said, the linebackers couldn't do much because the defensive line, they were in the wrong gaps. They were running the wrong way. They were flowing to the ball, and they were getting caught on counter plays. They tried to suck into the middle, and they were getting beat on the outside. So just really not in tandem here. Again, Sean Smith probably could have taken that ball and intercepted it and ran for a touchdown. David Emerson, poor tackling, at the beginning. And giving up some plays early on. But once again, as they started to kind of settle in, I think they did a little bit better.
No, absolutely. And the one thing that stuck out to me was actually the play of the corners. I know they struggled on. I know that Smith missed that interception. And, look, I heard a lot of people say this, he makes that play. It could be a tone setter. And it's true. And he missed it. And let's face it. I mean, you're going to make a play like that. You got to make the play. However, I love the aggressiveness of Sean Smith. He's been showing it all preseason. That's what this defense is pretty much designed to do. Last year I talked a lot about, I didn't like the fact that we were playing this, keeping everything top down style of defense. It's more of a bend, don't break. But it really looked that way. Our corners weren't at the level they needed to be. Emerson came and shined in it. That's why he got the contract. Guys like TJ Carey struggled. DJ Hayden struggled in it at first. I think he got a little better, but he wasn't up to par to where Emerson was. But at the end of the day, I like the aggressiveness of it. And as long as the defensive line, which you touched upon, does its job, it makes it so much easier to play that top-down defense because you're putting the quarterback in pressures where he has to make throws fast. Now, I don't recall off the top of my head the pressure on that play, but David Emerson read it. He jumped it, and if he makes that play, it changes the tone on defense. Unfortunately, it goes right through him, and the guy, I can't remember the player's name, but he stayed focused on the ball, caught it, and it turned into a big play. And that's what really, truly happened on that first drive. Not to say that they wouldn't end up running it on us, because like you mentioned, we just can't stop the run. We, like you said, we kept getting sucked into the middle. We weren't setting the edges and protecting the outside. It was really easy for Murray and Henry to bounce it out. And then once it became the Derrick Henry show, I mean, he was just overpowering us in the middle. We had no answer for the guy. He's exactly what we expect from Latavius Murray that we don't get. I mean, he's a tall, fast, big physical runner. But we saw that early on, like we talked about yesterday with Murray, but we just don't get enough of it. And, I know there's some issues that you saw. I'm going to let you touch base on that as far as what was going on with our defensive line. But, I was praising this defense for, rotating so many players in the week before with Green Bay. But it just seemed like in this game, they didn't do a stellar job of putting the right packages together. They had a lot of guys. Now, whether they were just trying to hide their front, whether they were trying to, taking the opportunity once again to test some fronts, it just was not working. And, it is just preseason, so I'm not going to put my stock into it. I'm still high on the talent that we have at the defensive position. In the next segment, I want to get into some of the players cut and what to look forward to as we move forward. But Pirate, once again, go ahead and talk about some of the things that you saw on that defensive front.
Yeah, well, looking at it, going back and watching the film over again from the bird's eye view, Dan Williams was getting pushed around. Jelly Ellis had some initial push on the first play. He was double teamed, still was able to get into the backfield. Unfortunately, it was a counter play. So they may have just kind of let him use his, inertia to kind of, make sure that he just didn't make the play from behind. I'm sorry, the first play was the play action throw by Mariota. So he got a little bit of penetration in that sense. But, then they started to run the ball, and unfortunately, Dan Williams, who was single blocked, was getting pushed around, and it was Ellis who was getting the double team. Also, Jihad Ward was getting pushed around a little bit as well. But the one glaring thing that I saw, which we're not really accustomed to, is Khalil Mack on a few plays, overrunning the plays, not looking at the running back, paying too much attention to the quarterback. And that's something that they're going to tell you, you got to watch for Mariota. He's going to fake the handoff. He's dangerous. So this is not to say that, oh my God, Mac this, Mac that. But I think last year and the year before, he really paid attention to that gap integrity, knowing that he was on the outside. He overruns the play, completely ran around DeMarco Murray because he's looking to get his hands on Marcus Mariota. That leaves, Emerson sort of on an island out there by himself. Now, Carl Joseph, at the beginning of that play, he comes running up sort of to kind of stuff the run. So you're thinking, okay, that side of the field looks like it's okay. But no, you get Khalil Mack. He overruns the play. You get basically Carl Joseph shifting to the inside and then getting blocked by the fullback who was going to block Mack, but realizes Mack has just run right by the play. So he turns around, comes in, blocks out Carl Joseph, and that leaves Emerson to make the tackle, and Emerson just completely whiffs. And then, and Khalil Mack did that a few times. I watched a few plays where he was just completely overrunning the running back. He wasn't paying attention to the running back at all. And then on the Taj pass that Smith almost got his hands on, you've got a guy right there in the middle of the field in Ben Heaney, probably could have made that play. But at the same time, Nate Allen, who starts the game, basically jumps up in the air for some strange unknown reason. So if either Smith picks off that play, Heaney is able to get back and make that play. He was only a few feet away. He had to turn around and readjust himself. Or Nate Allen doesn't jump up in the air, and go back and look at the film. Nate Allen, for some strange reason, jumps 4 or 5 feet into the air. By the time he comes down to there's nobody around him. By the time he comes down to the ground, the wide receiver is basically past him. Now, one thing, Emerson and DJ Hayden, heck of a play to chase that sucker down and bring him down. But it was just things like that. If they're going to double team on Ellis, and Dan Williams is getting pushed around back there, if Jihad Ward's getting slid out of the way or pushed to the inside of the field, and your linebackers once again are having to sift through and try to make tackles in traffic. I don't know how you're going to fix that. I was hoping that Dan Williams was going to, kind of come back and really turn it on. But like I said, watching the film, he was either out of position or getting pushed around, and he was being single blocked. That's a problem. So again, I think teams are going to realize, look, let's double team out Ellis. Let's get a single guy on Williams. Jihad Ward had some good pass rush moves, but even when we were creating pressure, it was very reminiscent of last year. No pressure up the middle, and that comes from Mario Edwards Jr. not being there and potentially the ability to slide Jihad Ward in on some of those passing downs. So on obvious passing downs, we had Ellis and Williams in there, and they were creating no pressure at all. Perfect pocket for Mariota to throw from, and he did just that. And then, like I said, in terms of being able to run the ball, they just they weren't holding their real estate once again. Just the wrong type of personnel, making it very, very difficult for these linebackers. And then if you're asking these corners to come up and make plays, yeah, they got better, but do you really want your cornerbacks to be coming up and trying to make plays against guys like Derrick Henry or Eddie Lacy, the bigger, stronger backs that we're going to be running into?
Okay, well, I think that's a lot of great points, and I'm going to use a lot of what you said, and I'm going to actually attempt here real fast to defend the defense, so to speak. Number one for me, this is the preseason, so maybe they're in experiment mode. And it sounds like to me, in watching back the film as well, they want a pass rush. If you look back at what we were strong at last season, for the most part, for most of the games, we were a solid run defense. So I think they understand the formula of how they need to protect the run. And in this case, I think they're really trying to focus in on the pass rush, getting to the getting to the quarterback. So they're mixing a lot of different personnel in the middle. They have Khalil Mack, just firing off. Now, I know he's under a lot of people's eyes. He's watching people, or people are watching him, to get to the passer more this season. So I think the emphasis is really on the pass rush part of what's going on here and getting the packages set for that. But like you said, the problem is they're not doing a good job in the middle. They're not giving the linebackers a chance, and you're seeing our cornerbacks have to come up and make too many stops against the run. It's great to have tackling corners, and it's great to have safeties that can come up in the box and really lay a hit on a running back. But in the last few weeks, we faced some really big backs, and we're getting exposed quite a bit. So I'm really hoping I'm right. I'm really hoping that they could adjust this defense as the season starts and put the pieces in the right place and stop trying to fit round pegs into square holes, or how does it go, square pegs into round holes, and just really try to get, and I believe in this coaching staff. I mean, I have a hard time believing anyway that a guy like Jack Del Rio with his background, defensive background, Ken Norton and his defensive background, that this is what we're going to be seeing week one. I really believe that, once again, I'm going to give them the credit and say that they're just looking at all players. And that's going to lead us into our second segment, where we're going to talk about some of the players that were cut. And what that means for the final 22. There's 22 players we're going to be looking at this Thursday, and we'll definitely get into detail tomorrow about that. But just in the second segment, I want to talk about some of these guys that were cut, some of these guys that there was one guy actually I had on my preliminary 53-man roster. And like I said, it was preliminary anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at that in the next segment, because I think it's going to kind of help us understand exactly what this defense is trying to put together right now, as they're experimenting with all these different sub packages and cornerbacks and our safeties, the whole 9 yards. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump right into that. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the W2W Review. I'm the Oakland Knight, joined by the Raider Pirate. We're joining our second segment now, and we're going to talk about some of the roster cuts and maybe a quick little preview of tomorrow's show where we talk about some of the things to look for. I don't want to get in too much detail of it, but Pirate, starting off, I mean, there was one guy on the list that's really shocking to me. I had him on my preliminary roster, 53-man roster notes that I have. But it kind of tells the story of what I just talked about in the last segment about what I believe the direction that this defense is trying to do as far as the pass rush. But do you want to go ahead and give your thoughts and maybe some of the names that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought one of the names that stuck out really, and I think that what we're both talking about here is Leon Orr. I was really excited about getting him when he came out. Did some really some good things in college at Florida. Had some attitude problems, but I really felt like spending a year on the practice squad was going to kind of help him out. So when he didn't make the roster last year, but we got him on the practice squad, I was really excited. Big, strong, kind of stout kid. I watched him at Florida. I mean, he was a wrecking ball. And so I really felt like, hey, look, we have some problems in the middle of this defense. Let's get Leon Orr in there. I just didn't understand why they weren't putting him in there more, or Stacey McGee for that matter, just kind of getting these guys in there because we were having problems.
Right.
So, that to me was a real shocker. I don't know if it's an attitude thing. This coaching staff doesn't have a lot of patience for guys with attitudes, and that's fine. I mean, if it is an attitude thing, you don't want that to kind of come back and start creating problems in the locker room. But, they did bring him in. They activated him for 3 games last year. The guy's on the practice squad. Now you've got to come in. You got to compete against other rookies and guys that you're bringing in to compete with you. He should have been able to do that. There's no excuse. You come in. You go through the rigors of an NFL season. You practice with the team. You get to understand football, the concepts. You learn the defense. I just don't understand how a guy with his talent. But again, he was undrafted for a reason. Why? Because he leaves school. He's got attitude problems. He's uncoachable. So the coaching staff comes along and tries to say, we can turn this into a reclamation project, and it just doesn't happen. So once again, I don't know if that was the reason or if he was just outplayed by guys that are getting outplayed. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, particularly for this defensive line. I just don't understand it. We got rid of a couple of safeties, Chris Edwards, Chris Hackett, and Jimmy Hall. So that's 3 safeties. So they must feel pretty good about where they're at. But then again, none of those names stand out as guys where you're like, hey, we really need that guy. Maybe you bring in a Brandon Ross or something like that, as a backup for some depth. And that's pretty much it. Tremaine Jacobs, I mean, he was a 3-year guy out of Texas A&M. But again, I think they feel pretty good about the corners that they have and the safeties that they have. So it's good to see McGill, still on there at this point.
No, yeah, and I'm gonna agree. You hit the nail right on the head in the first part. Leon Orr was the guy that I had on my preliminary 53-man roster. He came in last season as an undrafted free agent. I know he had some off the field issues in college, but he kind of made a name for himself in the last preseason last year. And then he showed up late. He showed up late in the season where they brought him up from the practice squad, and he got a little bit of work really late in the season. I think it was the last few games. So I was expecting him to really push McGee. Now McGee's still on this roster, and like I said, there's a lot of things I can get into right now. I do want to save that for tomorrow's show on our pregame show when we take a look at Thursday night's matchup versus the Seahawks, because I believe that this is setting the stage of some certain areas where there's going to be a ton of competition. But there were some moves that were made, especially defensively, that pretty much tells a story. So I'm just going to touch real quick base on them. You were talking about all the safeties that we let go. And yes, it was nice to see Miguel still on the roster, because I feel that Miguel, he's that double-edged guy that we have right now. He's going to be deep, I believe, in that safety position, but he's a guy that if need be, we could slide over the corner. So it's the best of both worlds. He also can show up on special teams. I already have him locked in as a depth piece on the safety in the safety position on this roster. The other guy that's there is Dewey McDonald, a guy that we feel that showed up in that Arizona game as being just really horrible. And the last few weeks, I haven't heard his name mentioned too much. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. I believe he is still there primarily for protecting the other ones on the roster. So I think this Thursday night we'll get a heavy look at Miguel and McDonald. That's just my early prediction. Like I said, I'm going to try to stay away from that kind of talk. But this defensive line, once again, a lot of young guys still on this roster right now. Gonna get a hard look at tomorrow, but getting rid of Tremaine, he was the biggest standout of the whole roster cut as far as having the most experience. So most of these guys were 1 year rookies that we let go yesterday. Tremaine was brought in primarily as a second look guy to kind of add some competition to what we already had. I believe our cornerback situation will look a lot, almost identical as far as player personnel, with the exception of Sean Smith and Miguel in a different position. But Tremaine was probably a special teams guy, which leads me to believe that some of these guys are showing up on film in the coaching meetings where they feel confident moving forward with the guys in special teams. So, I mean, there's a lot of positive things. Now, the Leon Orr thing, like we were touching upon, I think maybe you cut him now in hopes that teams cannot. I think there's a little bit of strategy here too, especially with Leon Orr. We talked about it a little bit yesterday too, but you cut Leon Orr now and you just hope that he could clear waivers at this point. And once he clears waivers, then you immediately sign him to the practice squad. That gives him another year to develop. If it's not an attitude thing, right? And you kind of block the teams from making that, they can't really make that. In order to make that call right now, they have to release somebody ahead of time. Maybe there's a guy they're looking at. So once we get him on the practice squad, that doesn't make him safe. But what that does do is forces a team to say, hey, if you want this guy, you have to put him on your active roster. You have to put him on your 53. You can't take him from the practice squad and put him on your practice squad or anything like that. So I'm hoping, because I believe the kid has potential, and as you see, we're struggling in the middle right now. I believe the personnel still there will be fine, but I'm just hoping that that's the case with Orr, that they're trying to get some of these guys on the practice squad sooner rather than later to protect their investment. But it's risky keeping some of these other guys that we'll talk about tomorrow, like Calhoun, Cowser, Latham, et cetera. I mean, the closer we get to that cutting point, these guys have a great chance of making this roster. Any thoughts on that, Pirate?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think they're going to have to bring in a safety from somewhere, too. Again, we haven't seen enough of McGill, but if you really look at the three safeties that we have, one guy is a wily veteran, another guy has been injury prone, and then the rookie is coming off of an ACL injury. And then you've got a guy behind him who's a converted cornerback. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, these guys are able to stay healthy the entire year. But the NFL, it's tough. In terms of the defense, again, Leon Orr, to me, like we said, it's one of those two things. It's an attitude thing, in which case they don't want him back, and they let him know that. Hey,
right.
Your career here with the Raiders is over. Thank you very much. And that's a head scratcher, because this is a team that needs somebody in the middle of that defensive line. Now, I watched Stacy McGee in the Tennessee game, and he did some really good things. So perhaps he's ready to be stepping into a role where he's getting some more responsibility. But once again, Leon Orr ended up leaving Florida because he didn't like the role that he was playing in their offense. They were sort of phasing him out a little bit, bringing him in, bringing him out. He really didn't like that role. How is he going to respond to this, right? He lost 30 pounds to kind of come in.
This is key.
Lose some weight, come in, be quicker, become more of a penetrator, and do some different things like that. And again, this is the type of defense that kind of needs that middle pressure from the middle. So again, if you have needs on this defensive line and this guy can't make it, how is he going to handle that? I mean, I know that he thinks that he can play, obviously, or he wouldn't be playing. So to be cut twice, it'd be interesting to see how he handles it. I hope this is not the last we see of Leon Orr. But again, if it is a attitude problem, it's an uncoachable problem. He's taking plays off because he believes that he should be featured, or he should be starting, or something like that. Then that's a different story. Then you have to part ways.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a real key point there, Pirate, and that is, a guy with an attitude problem, it makes it really hard to make them fully coachable. I think I brought this up last week when we were talking about Cowser and Calhoun, and I was saying that the one thing that they showed me in that Green Bay game was the fact that they could be coachable, right? I mean, these guys, Calhoun improved on what he did in week 1, and Cowser kind of maintained himself a little bit less, but he played solidly. Now, we didn't hear a lot from him in this game, and it was pretty bad all around on defense, but there's something to say. If you look at film, a lot of these young guys like Calhoun and Cowser, like I mentioned, basically they really want to test these guys in their system, and that's the first and foremost. But the second thing is, are they coachable? Is this something that we can get them to relate to? Are they paying attention in the film room? And they taking what we're teaching them in the film room and at least applying it in practice? And I believe that seems to be the case, at least with those two guys. Leon Orr, on the other hand, maybe it's an attitude problem, like you said, and he's not paying attention in field rooms. He's maybe getting a little too arrogant with his athletic ability, and maybe he's not coachable, right? Maybe they feel like, okay, this guy's attitude is more on the lines, well, I'm athletic, I can play this game, and it's making it hard for him to be coached. Or, like I said, you said McGee really showed up, and he did. And McGee, I believe it's his 4th year, and he was a guy that was supposed to be an early round pick, and I think we picked him up in the later rounds. He was kind of a steal at that point, but he had off the field issues, which he actually cleaned up, a lot like Shelby Harris, who's no longer on the team. But he showed a lot of signs, a little undersized. But I believe in this coaching staff, and when it comes to Leon Orr, I just think that for what it seems to be, what this coaching staff is trying to do defensively, they want to add a little bit more pass rush in the middle. So guys like Latham, guys like Jahad Ward, Mario Edwards Jr., who hopefully will be back sooner than later, will be able to step back in and apply both run defense and some pass rush up the middle. I think that's what they're leaning towards. So we might not see as many big guys. I mean, hopefully they at least run 3. Hopefully McGee makes this roster. I actually thought that Orr was going to take McGee over, but maybe McGee has shown enough, not only inside the sub packages on defense, but maybe on special teams. I mean, let's face it, you're not going to be seeing a guy like Leon Orr running down the field making too many plays on kick returns. So there's a lot of different things to look at, and it's going to be interesting as we move forward to get a good feel of where this team's headed. So tomorrow we're definitely going to do that. I think that's going to be one of our primary focuses in our pregame show, is taking a look at some of these guys that are not necessarily on the bubble, in my opinion, but are actually going to be on this roster, but to see how they fit. There's 22 players left to cut, so it's going to be interesting moving forward. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up, partner?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, there's still more guys to be released, so we're not going to know what's happening with these guys, until after the Thursday game, which is kind of cool that it's so quick. It's just so unfortunate that it's a game that we're going to be looking at just in terms of depth. But like you said, I think the Cowser Calhoun thing is a little bit different. Calhoun basically is a high draft pick, and Cowser showed a lot. So if you kind of cut this guy, somebody else is going to pick him up and put him on that roster. They're going to realize, hey, this guy can play, right? So let's go ahead and swoop that guy up. Like we were talking about with McCaffrey, it's kind of that same type of thing where the Raider coaching staff knows exactly what they have in Leon Orr, but not a lot of other staffs do. So you may be able to get him out there. He didn't really explode and be dominant. When we were watching Cowser, it was like, man, this kid's hair is on fire. He's not giving up. And like I said, Calhoun, they're obviously going to give time to develop. He doesn't have to become a star right out of the box, right? He doesn't have to bring that same level. So again, it's going to take a minute here for them to, get through all of these cuts, and then to kind of realize, okay, we're going to bring this guy back or use that guy. So, but once again, it's a long process. Some of these guys will be back; they're not gone forever, and then some of them will be gone forever. So, like you said, this coaching staff hopefully is going to keep the best 53 and the best practice squad that they can muster.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, that's going to wrap up the show for today. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the W2W Review, and we want to remind you of a few things. Number one, Go check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at The Will to Win. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can email us at thew2w@gmail.com. That is thew2w@gmail.com. And don't forget that we run a live show directly after the game. So Thursday night, look for the live broadcast here on YouTube, where we take your live phone calls and get instant reactions, your instant reactions, as well as ours on that Thursday night matchup. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow to the W2W review, because it's a short week. We're not going to be running a broadcast, so we will do our pregame tomorrow here on the W2W review, where we will talk a lot about these bubble guys, a lot of these guys that have a chance to make a name for themselves, especially in the linebacker position, in my opinion. And the most key thing I'm looking forward to is that running back position. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Until then, I'm the Oakland Knight. He's the Raider Pirate, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Stay Raider strong. Hey there, I'm Jason Smith, also known as the Oakland Knight. We'd like to thank you for watching the Will to Win broadcast here on YouTube. And if you would like to stay up to date for more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Or you could click any one of the videos on the side to watch more great videos. Thank you once again, and stay Raider strong.